Hello, Algebra students. This is Saxon Algebra 2, Lesson 30A, Deductive Reasoning. First of all, what is reasoning? Reasoning refers to our ability to determine the validity of a conclusion based on statements thought to be true. This is a quote by Dr. Paul Merritt. Deductive reasoning is when we start with some basic ideas and see what conclusions we can draw from them. In other words, deductive reasoning is reaching a conclusion based on statements that are assumed to be true. Someone could also reach a conclusion based on statements that are not true. Obviously, a conclusion based on statements that are false would also be false. But sometimes we start with a false statement to test our reasoning skills. Studying deductive reasoning is an important life skill. It will help you to reach good conclusions, and it will also help you to see if an argument is logical or not. Welcome, Mr. Spock. Syllogisms are good practice in deductive reasoning. A syllogism is a simple three-step reasoning process. It starts with an if-then statement, which is called the major premise. Then a second statement is added, which is called the minor premise. These two statements lead to a conclusion. Syllogisms: 1. The major premise. 2. The minor premise. 3. The conclusion. What is the major premise? The major premise of a syllogism is an if-then statement. For example, if a quadrilateral is a square, then it is a rectangle. Simply put, if square, arrow, then rectangle. The arrow goes in only one direction. The major premise says something about if square. It doesn't say anything about if not square. It also doesn't say anything about if rectangle, which is a good thing because not all rectangles are squares. The basic format of the valid syllogism. The basic format of the major premise is, if some group, then there is some characteristic. The basic format of the minor premise is, some item or individual is in the group. The basic format of the conclusion is, therefore, the individual has the characteristic. A syllogism is a short lawyer's argument to show that an individual has a characteristic. Maybe these arrows will help. Some group appears in the beginning of the major premise and the end of the minor premise. Some item or individual appears in the beginning of the minor premise and the beginning of the conclusion. Some characteristic appears at the end of the major premise and at the end of the conclusion. The valid syllogism in action. If a quadrilateral is a square, then it is a rectangle. Group to characteristic. Quadrilateral ABCD is a square. Item is in the group. Therefore, quadrilateral ABCD is a rectangle. So, item has characteristic. Here is another. All poets are poor. Group equals poets. Characteristic equals poor. Roger is a poet. Individual equals Roger is in the group. Therefore, Roger is poor. So, individual has the characteristic. Here's a fun one. All chickens have 3 legs. Group equals chickens. Characteristic equals 3 legs. Henry is a chicken. Individual equals Henry is in the group. Therefore, Henry has 3 legs. So, individual has the characteristic. Here's the best part. It's a valid syllogism. But chickens do not have 3 legs. But our major premise said they do. We accept the major premise as given. The reasoning is flawless. It's a valid syllogism. Why do we accept the major premise as given? When you analyze syllogisms, you are not looking for truth itself. You are training your mind to reason properly. Some of the best training comes when you are in nonsense land. Therefore, we always accept the major premise as if it is true. Starting from there, we look for flaws in the reasoning. Valid or invalid? If a triangle is a tove, then it is brillig. Triangle PQR is a tove. Therefore, triangle PQR is brillig. This one is valid. Why do we call syllogisms valid or invalid? We use those terms to show whether the reasoning is good or flawed. A valid syllogism might have a false conclusion if it starts with a false premise. Case in point, all chickens have 3 legs. We don't care whether the conclusion is false if the reasoning is good. Remember, we are honing our reasoning skills. Some of the best practice comes from nonsense land. Let's look at some syllogisms that are invalid. All dogs are cats. Mittens is a cat. Therefore, Mittens is a dog. Do you understand why this syllogism is invalid? Group equals dogs, characteristic equals cats. Individual has the characteristic. But individual has the characteristic is the conclusion to a syllogism, not the minor premise. So, no. The reasoning is flawed. It's invalid. So, fixing the flaws. All dogs are cats. Mittens is a dog. Therefore, Mittens is a cat. Here's another one. If it rains, I will go shopping. Group, it rains. Characteristic, go shopping. It did not rain. What? The major premise did not say anything about not raining. Therefore, I did not go shopping. The reasoning is flawed. The conclusion is invalid. All we know for sure is that if it rains, I will go shopping. If it does not rain, I might go shopping. Or I might not. Since the major premise doesn't mention not raining, we can't reason any further. Let's finish with some valid syllogisms. All stars twinkle. Rigel is a star. Therefore, Rigel twinkles. If a figure is a circle, then it is a hornet. The letter O is a circle. Therefore, the letter O is a hornet. If a protozoa is in phylum Mastigophora, then it has a flagella. The euglena is a protozoa in phylum Mastigophora. Therefore, the euglena has a flagella. One last word. There are several kinds of syllogisms. The syllogisms in this lesson are called categorical syllogisms. You will see this kind getting trixier and trixier as we go along. But isn't that the fun part of any game? Getting to the next level? I hope this helped you to master this lesson. And we'll see you next time.